My husband left me for his mistress. I let him go with everything he forgot. The day my husband walked out our front door with his suitcase and his 25-year-old secretary, I stood in the doorway and smiled. Not a bitter smile. Not a fake smile. A genuine, peaceful smile that confused the hell out of both of them. That's it. Daniel stared at me, his hand frozen on the handle of his luggage. You're not going to fight? Not going to beg? I shook my head slowly, leaning against the doorframe of my Victorian townhouse in Lincoln Park, Chicago. No, Daniel. If you want to go, go. I won't stop you. Beside him, Chen shifted uncomfortably in her designer heels, the ones I'd noticed on our joint credit card statement 3 months ago. She was everything I wasn't, young, eager, wide-eyed. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and she wore the kind of tight red dress that screamed, "I won." She looked at me like I was pathetic. Come on, babe, she tugged at Daniel's arm, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. She's not worth it. Let's just go. Daniel's face flickered with something, disappointment? He'd expected a scene. He'd wanted me to collapse, to give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd broken me. Instead, I stood there in my yoga pants and oversized sweater, holding a mug of coffee, utterly calm. Right, he finally said, his jaw tight. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the division of assets. Sure thing, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. It was still hot, the rich aroma of the dark roast filling my nostrils. Take care of yourself, Daniel. They left. I watched through the window as Brittany's little BMW, the one Daniel had helped her buy with our money, pulled away from the curb. I watched until the red taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I closed the door, locked it, and let out the longest breath of my life. My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm 34 years old. I'm a graphic designer who runs a small but successful branding agency from my home office. For 8 years, I'd been married to Daniel Hayes, a sales manager at a pharmaceutical company. We met at a mutual friend's wedding when I was 26. He was charming, ambitious, had that perfect smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our wedding was beautiful. Not extravagant, but tasteful. We honeymooned in Tuscany, drank wine in small villages, made love under ancient olive trees. I thought I'd found my person. For the first 4 years, things were good. We weren't perfect, no couple is, but we were solid. We had Sunday brunches at our favorite cafe, Friday movie nights, talks about having kids someday. I built my business while he climbed the corporate ladder. We bought this house together, painted the walls together, planted roses in the backyard together. Then, about 4 years in, something shifted. Daniel started working later. Business trips became more frequent. He'd come home smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked, he'd laugh it off. Victoria, you're being paranoid. It's just clients. You know how it is. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But 6 months ago, everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in March. Daniel had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he showered. A message notification popped up on the screen. From Brittany. Last night was amazing. I can't wait until you leave her and we can be together for real. My heart stopped. Coffee mug I'd been holding slipped from my fingers and shattered on the tile floor, sending brown liquid and white ceramic shards everywhere. I stood there, staring at those words, reading them over and over until they burned into my brain. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. I heard Daniel humming, actually humming, some pop song. And in that moment, I made a decision. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or cry or throw things. Instead, I carefully took a photo of the message with my phone. Then I cleaned up the broken mug, made myself another coffee, and sat down at my desk. By the time Daniel came downstairs, freshly showered and smiling, I was working on a client's logo design, completely composed. Morning, babe, he kissed the top of my head. What's for breakfast? There's eggs and toast in the warmer, I said without looking up. You're the best. He squeezed my shoulder. I waited until he left for work. Then I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys in Chicago. I needed the best. I needed someone ruthless, someone who understood that sometimes the best revenge isn't emotional, it's legal. I found Margaret Reynolds, 58 years old, senior partner at Reynolds and Associates with a reputation for demolishing cheating spouses in court. Her consultation fee was $500. I booked an appointment for the next day. Mrs. Hayes, Margaret said, sitting across from me in her corner office with a view of the Chicago River. She was impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Tell me everything. I did. I showed her the screenshot. I told her about the late nights, the unexplained charges on our credit cards, the way he'd become distant. I told her I wanted to be smart about this. Margaret leaned back in her leather chair, her fingers steepled. Here's what I need you to do. Don't confront him yet. We need evidence. Real, documented evidence. I'm going to recommend a private investigator, the best in the city. His name is Robert Chen, no relation to the Mistress. He's discreet, thorough, and his evidence holds up in court. How much will this cost? I asked. His retainer is $3,000. But trust me, Victoria, it's worth every penny. I hired Robert that same week. He was a man in his late 40s, former cop, with the kind of weathered face that had seen everything. He didn't judge, didn't offer sympathy. He just did his job. For the next 4 months, Robert followed Daniel. He photographed him and Brittany at restaurants, hotels, her apartment. He documented every credit card charge, every suspicious business trip that wasn't actually business. He even found out that Brittany wasn't the first. There had been 2 other affairs over the past 3 years, both with younger women from his office. Your husband has a type, Robert said dryly, handing me a thick folder of evidence. And he's not as careful as he thinks he is. While Robert was gathering evidence, I was making other moves. Quietly, strategically. Our house, this beautiful Victorian townhouse worth about $800,000, had been in both our names. But I'd been the one making the mortgage payments for the last 5 years from my business account while Daniel claimed his salary went to investments. With Margaret's guidance, I discovered those investments were mostly bullshit. He'd been spending it on his affairs. Margaret helped me execute a quiet quitclaim deed. I had my mother, Patricia Hayes, buy the house from us at market value. The transaction was legal, documented, and Daniel signed the paperwork without reading it. He'd been too distracted texting Brittany to notice what he was actually signing. You're selling the house to your mom? He'd asked absently, scribbling his signature. Just a refinancing thing, I'd lied smoothly. Better tax benefits. Margaret's handling it. He'd shrugged and gone back to his phone. The house was now technically my mother's property, which meant it wouldn't be part of the divorce settlement. And my mother had already signed a will leaving it to me. Next came the business. Hayes Branding Solutions, our joint venture on paper, though I'd built it from scratch. Daniel was listed as co-owner because I'd stupidly wanted to include him in my success. He'd contributed exactly 0 hours of work but legally owned 50%. Margaret worked her magic again. We discovered that Daniel had been using the business account for personal expenses, specifically gifts for his mistresses. Expensive jewelry, weekend trips, even Brittany's BMW down payment. All documented, all traceable. That's embezzlement, Margaret said with a sharp smile. He's been stealing from his own company. We can use this. With that leverage, Margaret drafted new ownership papers. I had Daniel sign them during one of his distracted evenings, buried in a stack of routine business documents. Just sign here, honey, I'd said sweetly, pointing to the signature lines. Annual corporate filings. He'd signed without reading. Just like always. Hayes Branding Solutions was now 100% mine. Our joint bank accounts were trickier. We had about $200,000 in savings and investments accumulated over 8 years. Technically, it was marital property. But here's what Daniel didn't know. 80% of that money came from my business profits that I deposited into our joint accounts. I had records proving every deposit. Margaret advised me to wait. Don't touch it yet. When he leaves, and he will leave, that's when we act. She was right. 2 weeks ago, Daniel came home from work looking nervous. Victoria, we need to talk. I looked up from my laptop. Sure. What's up? He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he always did when he was uncomfortable. I've been unhappy. In our marriage. For a while now. I set down my coffee cup slowly. Okay. I think we should separate. Maybe get divorced. Because of Brittany? I asked calmly. His face went white. How did you? I've known for 6 months, Daniel. Color drained completely from his face. You knew? And you didn't say anything? I shrugged. What was there to say? You'd already made your choice. Victoria, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Brittany and we just connected. She understands me in a way that... Save it, I cut him off, my voice still calm. If you want to be with her, be with her. I'm not going to stop you. He blinked, clearly confused by my reaction. You're okay with this? I'm not okay with being cheated on, I said. But I'm also not going to waste energy fighting for someone who doesn't want to be here. So yes, Daniel. Leave. Go be with Brittany. I hope you'll be very happy together. That had been 2 weeks ago. He'd moved into Brittany's apartment that same night. And now today, he'd come back for the last of his things. After they drove away, I sat on my couch, the expensive leather sectional Daniel had insisted we buy, and pulled out my phone. I had 3 calls to make. First, Margaret. He's gone. Perfect. I'll file the papers tomorrow morning. And Victoria? Get ready. This is where it gets fun. Second, my bank. Yes, I'd like to transfer funds from my joint account to my personal account. The full amount. Yes, I'm aware it's a joint account. Yes, I have the legal right. Thank you. $200,000 moved from our joint account to mine in less than 5 minutes. I kept meticulous records showing that $160,000 of it came from my business deposits. The other $40,000? Well, we'd let the lawyers argue about that. Third, Robert Chen. I need you to keep watching him. I want to know everything. You got it, Mrs. Hayes. The divorce papers were served to Daniel at his office 3 days later. According to Robert, who happened to be watching, Daniel's face had gone from confused to furious in about 3 seconds. He called me immediately. Victoria, what the hell is this? Divorce papers, I said pleasantly. I was at my favorite coffee shop, working on a new client's brand identity. You said you wanted a divorce. I didn't mean you emptied our bank account. Actually, I transferred my money from our joint account to my personal account. Check the records, Daniel. That's my business income. The house is in your mother's name? When did? You signed the paperwork 2 months ago. Remember? The refinancing. Silence. I could practically hear his brain working, trying to remember. You tricked me. I protected myself, I corrected. There's a difference. You were planning to leave anyway. I just made sure I didn't lose everything I'd built. This is bullshit, Victoria. I'll fight this. My lawyer will. Your lawyer will find that you've been embezzling from Hayes Branding Solutions for 3 years, I interrupted. About $60,000 in unauthorized personal expenses. I have every receipt, every bank statement. Would you like me to file criminal charges, or would you prefer to settle this quietly? Another silence. Longer this time. You wouldn't, he finally said, but his voice had lost its anger. Now it just sounded scared. Try me. He hung up. Margaret called me an hour later, laughing. His lawyer just contacted me. Daniel wants to settle. Already. The embezzlement evidence scared him. He knows he doesn't have a leg to stand on. He's willing to accept a clean break. He walks away with his personal belongings and his car. You keep the house, the business, and the savings. He'll waive any claim to alimony. And Brittany? I asked. Margaret's laugh got louder. Oh, Victoria. You're going to love this. Apparently, Brittany just found out that Daniel isn't the wealthy executive she thought he was. She thought he owned half of a successful business and a valuable property. When she discovered he's basically broke and might face embezzlement charges, she dumped him. Last night, via text, I felt a smile spread across my face. Not a bitter smile. A satisfied one. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Daniel got his clothes, his golf clubs, and his paid-off Honda Civic. I got everything else, the house, the business, the savings, and best of all, my freedom. But the story doesn't end there. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into an old friend at a networking event. His name was Marcus Webb, and we'd gone to design school together 12 years ago. He'd always been talented, funny, and kind, the kind of guy who remembered your coffee order and asked about your mom's health. Victoria Hayes, he smiled when he saw me. Or is it still Hayes? Actually, I went back to my maiden name. Victoria Chen. Chen, he repeated. That's right. I remember now. Well, Victoria Chen, you look amazing. How have you been? We talked for hours that night. He'd built his own architecture firm, was recently divorced himself, and was refreshingly honest about the whole experience. My ex-wife and I just grew apart, he said with a shrug. No drama, no affairs. We just wanted different things. It was sad, but it was mutual. It was such a stark contrast to my experience with Daniel. Marcus and I started meeting for coffee. Then coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into weekend trips to Milwaukee to check out Frank Lloyd Wright houses. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked about my work. He never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough. 6 months later, we were dating officially. And for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. As for Daniel, Robert kept me updated occasionally, not because I asked, but because Robert had become something of a friend. Your ex-husband is working at a different pharmaceutical company now, Robert told me over lunch one day. Took a pay cut. He's living in a studio apartment in Wicker Park. Apparently, he tried to get back with Brittany, but she's dating a tech CEO now. And the embezzlement? I spoke to your lawyer. She agreed not to file criminal charges in exchange for Daniel signing the divorce settlement without contesting anything. He got lucky, honestly. I nodded. I hadn't wanted to destroy Daniel's life, I just wanted to protect mine. 1 year after my divorce, Marcus proposed. We were in my backyard, the one I'd planted roses in with Daniel, the one that was now truly mine. Marcus had transformed it into a secret garden, adding a stone pathway, fairy lights, and a beautiful arbor covered in climbing jasmine. Victoria, he got down on one knee, holding a simple but stunning emerald ring. I know we've both been through difficult divorces. I know we're both cautious. But I also know that I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me? I looked at this man, this good, honest, wonderful man, and I felt tears in my eyes. But they were happy tears this time. Yes, I whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. Our wedding was small. Just close friends and family at the Chicago Botanic Garden. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus's daughter from his previous marriage was our flower girl. It was perfect, not because it was extravagant, but because it was real. The reception was held at my house, our house now. As I stood on the back porch, watching our guests mingle in the garden under the fairy lights, Marcus came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. Happy, he murmured into my hair. Incredibly, I said, leaning back against him. You know what I love about you, he said. You're the strongest person I know, but you're not hard. You've been hurt, but you're not bitter. That takes real courage. I turned in his arms to face him. I learned something from my divorce with Daniel. What's that? That the best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's building a life so beautiful, so full, so authentically yours that they become irrelevant. Marcus kissed me softly. Wise woman. I have my moments. 2 years after my divorce, Hayes Branding Solutions, now officially Victoria Chen Design Studio, had grown by 40%. I'd hired 3 new designers, moved into a proper office space, and landed several major corporate clients. My income had more than doubled. Marcus's architecture firm was thriving too. We'd even collaborated on a few projects together. I'd handle the branding while he designed the physical spaces. We made a good team. We bought a second property together, a weekend cottage in Door County, Wisconsin. We spent summers there, swimming in Lake Michigan, drinking wine on the deck, planning our future. I saw Daniel one more time, completely by accident. I was having lunch at a restaurant in the Loop with a client when I spotted him at the bar. He was alone, nursing a beer, looking at his phone. He'd aged. There were new lines around his eyes, gray in his hair that hadn't been there before. He looked tired. Small. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret. Just nothing. He looked up and saw me. Our eyes met across the restaurant. He raised his glass slightly, a sad little gesture that might have been a greeting or an apology or just acknowledgement. I nodded once, then turned back to my client and continued our conversation about brand positioning and market differentiation. When I left the restaurant an hour later, Daniel was gone. That night, Marcus and I were lying in bed reading. He was absorbed in a biography of some famous architect, and I was flipping through a design magazine. Hey, I said suddenly. Do you ever think about your ex-wife? Marcus set down his book and looked at me thoughtfully. Sometimes. Mostly I hope she's happy. We weren't right for each other, but she wasn't a bad person. I saw Daniel today. Yeah? How was that? Weird, I admitted. I felt nothing. Like I was looking at a stranger. Marcus pulled me closer. That's because he is a stranger. The man you married doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. You're very wise for an architect, I teased. I have my moments, he grinned, echoing my words from our wedding day. 3 years post-divorce, I was invited to speak at a women in business conference in Chicago. The topic was rebuilding after personal setbacks. I almost declined. I wasn't sure I wanted to share my story publicly. But then I thought about all the women who might be where I was 3 years ago, scared, hurt, not sure how to protect themselves. I accepted. Conference was held at a downtown hotel. There were about 200 women in the audience. I stood at the podium, looking out at all those faces, and I took a deep breath. My name is Victoria Chen, I began. 3 years ago, my husband left me for his 25-year-old secretary. I let him go. I smiled, said goodbye, and closed the door behind him. And everyone thought I was weak. Pathetic. A doormat. I paused, looking around the room. Everyone was listening intently. What they didn't know was that 6 months before he left, I discovered his affair. And instead of confronting him, instead of screaming or crying or begging him to stay, I did something else. I prepared. I told them about hiring Margaret, about Robert's investigation, about the strategic transfers of assets, the documentation of Daniel's embezzlement, the careful legal maneuvering that protected everything I'd built. I let him go with everything he forgot, I said. He forgot that I was smart. He forgot that I built our life while he was busy destroying it. He forgot that underestimating someone is the fastest way to lose to them. The room was silent. Here's what I learned, I continued. When someone betrays you, you have 2 choices. You can let the betrayal define you, make you bitter, destroy you. Or you can use it to transform yourself into someone stronger, smarter, more powerful than you ever thought possible. I talked about building my business, about finding Marcus, about creating a life that was mine on my terms. The best revenge, I concluded, isn't revenge at all. It's indifference. It's building something so beautiful that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. It's waking up one day and realizing you don't think about them anymore. That you've moved on to such bigger, better things that they're just a footnote in your story. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. Women stood up. Some were crying. After my speech, dozens of them came up to me, wanting to shake my hand, share their own stories, ask for advice. One woman in particular stuck with me. She was in her 40s, well-dressed but with eyes that looked haunted. "My husband is cheating," she whispered. "I know it, but I don't know what to do." I took her hand. "First, stop confronting him. Start documenting everything. Second, find a good lawyer. I can give you Margaret's number. Third, protect yourself financially. And fourth, remember that you deserve better than someone who doesn't value you." She hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much." That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, I thought about that woman. I thought about who I'd been 3 years ago, the woman standing in the doorway, watching her husband leave with his mistress, smiling through her pain. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, noticing I was awake. "How far I've come," I said. "How different my life is now. Better. So much better," I said honestly. "You know what's funny? Daniel leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me. If he hadn't left, I never would have realized how strong I actually am. I never would have met you. I never would have built the life I have now." "Funny how life works," Marcus said, kissing my forehead. "The things we think will destroy us sometimes end up saving us." 5 years after my divorce, I ran into Brittany. This time it was at a networking mixer for young professionals. She was working as an executive assistant at a startup, a significant step down from her position at the pharmaceutical company where she'd met Daniel. She saw me before I saw her. "Victoria?" "Victoria Chen." I turned, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. She looked different, older, more tired. The confidence she'd radiated that day she walked out with Daniel was gone. "Brittany," I said neutrally. "How are you?" I'm good," she lied. Then, after a pause, "I owe you an apology." I was genuinely surprised. "Oh, what I did, what Daniel and I did, it was wrong. I was young and stupid and I don't know what I thought. That I was in love, that he was going to give me this amazing life." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out he couldn't even give me a decent restaurant dinner without checking his bank account first." "You two didn't last long," I said. "It wasn't a question." 3 months, she admitted. Once I realized he was broke and potentially facing criminal charges, I bolted. I'm not proud of it. And now I'm trying to rebuild my career. Turns out homewrecker isn't a great reputation in professional circles. She looked at me with genuine remorse. "I heard you're doing really well. Your design studio, your marriage. I'm glad. You deserved better than Daniel." We both did, honestly. I studied her. She looked sincere. And I realized I didn't hate her. She'd been a foolish young woman who made terrible choices. But she was paying for them. "Thank you for the apology," I said. "I appreciate it." "For what it's worth," Brittany added, "you inspired me. The way you handled everything, with dignity and intelligence instead of drama. I want to be like that. Strong like that." "You can be," I said. "Just stop making decisions based on what you think will make your life easier, and start making them based on who you want to become." We talked for a few more minutes, then parted ways. I didn't think I'd ever be friends with Brittany, but I also didn't hate her anymore. She was just another person trying to figure out life. The following year, on our third wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised me with a gift. It was a framed photograph of our house, my house, the one I'd fought to keep, but it had been professionally shot at sunset, with the garden in full bloom and the windows glowing warm from inside. "Our home," Marcus said. "The one you refuse to lose. The one that's become ours." I hung it in our bedroom where I could see it every morning when I woke up. Looking at that photograph, I sometimes thought about the day Daniel left. The day I stood in that doorway and smiled as he walked away with Brittany, convinced he was taking everything while leaving me with nothing. He'd forgotten so much. He'd forgotten that I was smart enough to plan ahead. He'd forgotten that I was strong enough to protect myself. He'd forgotten that I built our life while he was just living in it. He'd forgotten that intelligence beats emotion every time. He'd forgotten that I didn't need him to be whole. Most of all, he'd forgotten that sometimes the quietest revenge is simply living well. Daniel left with his suitcases and his mistress, thinking he'd won. What he didn't realize was that I'd already won, 6 months earlier, when I decided not to be a victim. When I decided to be strategic instead of emotional. When I decided that my future was more important than his betrayal. Now 7 years later, I own a thriving business. I'm married to a man who cherishes me. I live in a beautiful home that's entirely mine. I wake up every morning excited about my life. And Daniel? According to the last update from Robert, who I still occasionally meet for coffee, Daniel is still working middle management, still living in that small apartment, still alone. Brittany moved to Los Angeles last year, trying to restart her career and her life. I don't think about either of them much anymore. They're characters in a story I've already finished writing. The story I'm writing now is so much better. It has a true partner. It has professional success. It has joy that isn't built on lies. It has a future that's mine to shape. And it all started the day I smiled and let my husband go, taking with him everything he forgot he didn't actually own. The house was never really his, I built it. The money was never really his, I earned it. The future was never really his, I created it. He left thinking he was leaving me with nothing. But the truth is, he left me with everything that mattered, my self-respect, my strength, and the knowledge that I never needed him to begin with. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is walking out of your life. Create space for the life you were always meant to live. My name is Victoria Chen. I'm 41 years old. I run a successful design studio, I'm married to my best friend, and I live in a beautiful home filled with love and laughter. And I got here by letting go of someone who never deserved me in the first place. That's not a story of revenge. That's a story of rebirth. And it started with a smile and a simple goodbye.